Hello and welcome back. Today we are going to be doing our metagame update for patch 1.9. As with the previous metagame updates, the goal here is to be timeless rather than timely. We are releasing this within 24 hours of the launch of the patch. We only have somewhere between 20 and 30 hours, and so we haven't fully discovered what exactly all the solutions to the metagame are. I think broadly speaking, we are going to separate this discussion into sort of 5 categories. We are going to talk about trade. There's a massive trade overhaul in the world market, which is an automated trading system where the levers that you have to pull are more influential and not direct, because you cannot directly do any trade now. The second is going to be treaties, which are agreements that you can get with the AI. Generally speaking, they are extremely powerful. They are not super well tuned, and there's a lot of exploits. I don't really know the most powerful exploits, but I think that there's a kind of straightforward way of thinking through them. The next thing is that companies are considerably stronger with the charters that they are receiving, and so this is going to be another thing that we talk through is a little bit on the companies. Another thing is that metagames, there are 2 metagames, in particular patch 1.7's metagame, that revolved around really kind of emphasizing diplomatic play with a bunch of great powers. I think that this to some extent is coming back, and I think the specializing metagame of 1.4 to some extent is coming back, and so we'll talk through both of those and what ways in which stylistically those might be similar. And then finally we'll kind of talk about some miscellaneous topics that we don't really properly fit into the other categories. Alright, so first up we have trade. We won't go into great depth on exactly how it works, because I think there's a lot of other videos for that, and to some extent it is a little bit intuitive, but you build trade centers. These trade centers allow you to trade with the world market. We'll show that in just a second, and in general they're very strong. They tend to have a nice balance in their own right, but in addition to this, it's important to note that they are making your other industries more profitable, because as you export things, you push the prices up, and you make those industries more profitable. And if you have more import, or if you have more inputs than outputs, which is often the case when you have more buy orders, then importing those input goods will also make your industries more profitable. Not only is trade generally efficient, it's actually quite strong. It can go to way higher levels than it can in previous sorts of patches, all the way back to 1.4. And because you can push really high levels, you can specialize. And this is a really important detail to emphasize. We'll talk about it quite a bit, but to break things down a little bit more in regards to the trade, when we take a look at this trade, they are going to happen on the world market. The world market, in terms of all the players, you can see some people will be importing the good, some people will be exporting the good. The combined total buy and sell orders is what forms the world market price. The world market price is what informs how much money you make out of these trade centers, where the difference between the local price, that's not the market price, the local price of the trade center, so where you build the trade center matters, this will inform how much value you get out of the trade center. So when we took a look at the revenue here, we are generating a lot of revenue off of the iron, because the local price for iron is a bit more expensive than what we are paying on the import price. You see there's a differential of 7 per unit. You will also see that there is this trade advantage figure here. This is modifying the world market price and allowing us to import at a lower price. There's ways to manipulate this. We won't go into too great of detail. You can look at the tooltip. It'll kind of tell you some stuff that's going on, but the main idea is that there will be winners who will get a better price, and there will be losers who get a worse price, and the overall average price will tend to be, there will be exceptions with kind of fiddliness or weirdness, but it will tend to be the world market price. So when you have trade advantage, you will do well, and when you don't have trade advantage, you will do poorly. Now, we could see here, we, for example, do have some buildings that have a positive trade advantage and some that have negative. It is calculated on a per state basis, per good. An example that might be illustrative as to the extent to which this matters is we're producing a ton of steel in Sao Paulo. The reason we are producing a ton of steel in Sao Paulo is because we are stacking a bunch of advantages that are going to lead to more throughput, both economies of scale. We have built this stack up to level 30, but also we do have in this location of Sao Paulo encouraged manufacturing. So we have over 100 throughput here. We are exporting steel out of Sao Paulo, which of course, this is intuitive. We are producing a ton of it here. We are exporting it because the local price in Sao Paulo is very much crashed, and it is below the market price, except for this is kind of reporting in a strange way that's not really correct, because if we look at the UI here, this is lower than the world market price. However, we are a net importer of steel nonetheless. So we are exporting it out of some locations and importing it to other locations as things go. You can see that we are both an exporter and importer of steel, and this is because we have some locations where it's extremely expensive and some locations where it's extremely cheap, and this allows us to interact with both ends of the world market here. The most powerful lever that you will have, generally speaking, is going to be tariffs and subventions. An important note, we will get to this in just a second, you cannot do tariffs if you are on free trade. What the tariffs and subventions will do is the tariffs will make it so your trade center, for every trade, will have to pay an additional cost in order to run that trade. So you can see here we are making 10K, we are moving 15 or 100 units, and so roughly, let's say we're making 7 per unit. If we put in a tariff, what will happen is for every unit moved, the trade center will have to pay the government, let's say 2. So instead of making 7 a unit, we make 5 a unit, right? And because what the trade centers do is they just seek the very most profitable trade possible, if we're only making 5 per unit, we will actually push down the amount of iron we are importing here. And so in this way, tariffs, regardless of what direction they are in, are going to push down trade in that advantage. So if we put in a tariff for import, we will import less. If we put in a tariff for export, we will export less. Subventions do the exact opposite, where you will instead be paying the trade center. If you take a look here, subventions will go to the profit column of the trade center, and tariffs will go to the expenses column of the trade center. And in this way, and this is the primary way, in this way you can massage trade. Because you cannot direct any trade routes yourself, I think the just general heuristic, or the most straightforward way of approaching this, is to tariff stuff you don't want to trade. So let's say we do not want to import like luxury goods of some kind. We don't really have a luxury good here, but this is a semi-luxury good. What we can do is we can take this and we can say, hey, we want our trade capacity to be used somewhere else, and so we are going to import it. This thing is kind of important to note. I think prices generally get driven up if you're playing properly on this patch specifically, and so you will also maybe need to address food security, and in this case use subventions if you are ending up in situations where you are getting mild or severe starvation on a lot of pops. But you will have to play around with this. I think that there's kind of an important discussion and exploration to be had around subventions. I think generally speaking, I'm about 60% sure that subventions are just generally speaking bad. 30% I think that they're actually a really tricky and weird and strange tool. We'll talk about this when we talk about treaties. That might be ubiquitous and you want to bob and weave with subventions a lot, and or have subventions on certain types of goods for reasons that have cascading effects that are kind of beyond the scope of this video, and are like an hour-long video in their own right, and I also don't have the answers, and 10% that they're really good. But the important note is I think they're probably bad, just in a general sense. But what they can do is they can maybe help you to push Diplo. Specifically, if you push a lot of trade, and subventions can allow you to target push specific things, as can in a much more targeted way than a tariff can, because a tariff just makes you trade less of a thing. A subvention actively makes you trade more of a thing. And this can help out a whole lot with Diplo. So, as a brief example, let's take a look at coffee on the Prussian market. Well, they are not producing any coffee, but they have 530 sell orders of coffee, and it's entirely through import. You can see that there's 663 buy orders, so they really like the coffee. The reason why it's doing so well is because this is a premium coffee good. We are the primary supplier of coffee. You can see we're exporting 2,600, and so as such, we have a lot of trade with Prussia. Okay, we have this trade agreement here with Prussia where we are exchanging trade privileges. If we renegotiate the treaty, we could take a look at the values we're getting from these things. And if we look at the trade privileges, generally speaking, acquiring any thumbs up juice allows you to really, really exploit and mess with the AI in really unfavorable ways for them. And if we take a look here, you can see that we are getting plus 50 of this 53 from the total monetary value of our mutual trade. We are exporting a bunch of coffee, they are importing a bunch of coffee. This is one of the things that's pushing this up. As it relates to tariffs and subventions, you could take a look at what these guys are doing. You kind of take a look into their market and look where their buy and sell orders are coming from. And in instances, for example, here, sell orders, their primary sell orders are coming from tobacco from trade, you can subvent the other side of it. So if we put subventions in on tobacco in our own market, then what we will be able to do is we could export more of this. In fact, we're tariffing exports because we don't want our trade juice to go to this. But in this way, we could target, increase all of our trade with Prussia, you know, get a really, really favorable treaty juice, and then do the treaty, and then undo all of our tariffs and subventions because they're on a temporary basis. And so this might be a play pattern for really kind of tweaking, massaging, but also in terms of a general kind of more strategic vision. Who you're trading with is going to matter for what types of agreements you can get with these guys. And so this is going to be a tool you can use either in a tactical way, just by microing it, or in a strategic way, let's say, by subventioning coffee and be the world supplier of everyone's drinks. You can get just better treaties with people in general. And so this is something that we're doing here with Brazil. But again, I don't think subventions are good. This is just trying to illustrate how it's a tool that may potentially be good. Let's talk a little bit more about treaties. In general, I think there's two heuristics that you should be using for kind of thinking your way through this. We're not going to explain and go through every single one of these, but just provide a few examples and some of the ideas behind it. First of all, the trade privileges. The AI overvalues temporal sorts of things. We can push this up for an additional 40 or 50-ish acceptance rate, just this agreement, the back and forth trade privileges. And they overvalue this sort of temporal stuff, specifically the stuff you can do with trades. We can look to maybe add some other stuff as it relates to all this and really, really push up this acceptance value. And then once we have the positive acceptance value, we can look to extract things from them. So that's kind of the first principle. The second principle is that the AI has zero appreciation for scaling. It seems that they don't really look at scaling too much, or they do, but it's not weighted heavily enough, something like this. So if you are very, very, very small, you can, at the start of the game, as just about anyone, offer power block embassies, or not anyone. It depends on if you are going to mess up their cohesion at all. But if you're not, you can be pretty aggressive, improve relations with GPs, and then offer them power block embassies. In exchange for this, you can get anywhere from, 500 to 2,000 ducats in response for this. Now, being able to generate 10,000 gold just at the start just is an absolutely insano sort of kick up in terms of what you can get from other countries and this type of thing. And so if there is a patch for really, really small starts being viable, this is the one. This is probably the easiest Indian territory patch that we've ever had, where there isn't like a bug related to Indian territory specifically, or where the US just doesn't where the US doesn't automatically back down if you sway in France or something to this effect. You can get really, really explosive starts with really, really small countries doing this. On the flip side of things, or kind of a more medium thing, is generally speaking, investment rights is incredible to get on other people as a result of companies, which we'll talk about in a bit, and it's terrible. You should give it up now. You should never ever give it up. But the AI will kind of undervalue this, and what you can do is, you can be like, hey, trade privileges, a little bit of back and forth, and now you accept the investment rights pretty readily. These are going to cost quite a bit more diplo on the trade privileges, but investment rights, relatively low diplo. As you scale really large, the AI will really underappreciate the effect or the value of your taking on debt. Generally speaking, it is probably a little bit too easy to take on debt. And if you get really big and you have really huge debts, they're more willing to take it on than they should be. And this is where you get more the higher end scaling. Obviously, 1,000 ducats is not very valuable when you're making tons and tons, or you're running a budget where, you know, you're plus or minus hundreds of thousands, but someone taking on several million of your debt is a pretty big deal. We just had Great Britain take on our debt, which is why we can take on their debt here in response. And so this will require kind of like a lot of fiddling and a lot of optimizing, but generally speaking, the AI is rather poor in evaluating these types of things. And so it's maybe useful to think about what your payouts are in terms of what you're going for, and looking for payouts that are scaling well with whatever you have going on. If you're big, you want stuff like take on debt. If you're small, you just want raw cash. And then look at what you can get to juice up the payout, whether it's military access, you know, trade privileges, what have you, these types of things. Also keeping in mind that, for example, if you grab states or locations that they really value, like Russia wants these, you can trade these as well. So picking up stuff like North Africa and trading it to France is also going to be a gameplay pattern that is pretty valuable. If we take a look at they hate us, so I don't know if they would give us anything, but I imagine that they would be pretty okay or really happy to be receiving the states that they particularly have an interest in. And this could be a way that we could make up with Russia if we wanted, but I do believe that they want the state. Or maybe it's just that they're seeing it and they value it to some degree, but hopefully this kind of provides a little bit of a framework for thinking about these as you explore the buttons and click on them and see what's good. Another important detail is if you commit to a law commitment, you do get a bonus passing it. As far as I know, we haven't experimented with this, but other people have talked about this, and so they generally won't. This generally won't push up acceptance, but if you just want to slip this in to make law passing easier, this is the new easy peasy law pass, lemon squeezy type of way you approach the game using treaties here. Alright, now we have companies. Now, companies, you can give out charters. Charters cost authority. Authority is way better now than it used to be, and so this means it's a buff for every single source of authority. Taking a look at one of these companies and some of their charters, this is generic wood. You might notice it also has tools on it. This is because we've given industry rights for tools on this. Tools, wood, rubber, really, really strong. Generic tools, you could add iron. I don't know all the combinations of this, and so this makes it telling you, oh, this generic thing is the best, this is the type of thing. I can't give that sort of evaluation at this point because I don't know all the pairings of all the industries you can add, but this is really, really substantive, and this completely shakes up which companies are good. I don't have too much experience with monopoly rights, but it is going to be an important detail. If monopoly rights is good, then it is possible that laissez-faire is going to be bad. I don't have much experience with this. I kind of, by reading it and looking at it, I don't think that it's too good, but it might be good. I don't really know. Coming over here, colonization rights, we don't have much experience with this as well. The experience we do have, I just think it's probably not worth the investment here when other things are really, really good in terms of the authority going into this, but this does allow you to kind of release a country or a subject out of your colony and this type of thing. Trade rights is a very significant one. It will allow your industry to invest in trade centers. You can see we have trade rights given to this company, and so now it adds trade centers to its portfolio in terms of what it can invest in. I'm pretty sure you want trade rights on at least one of these. Being able to buy the trade centers is kind of a big deal, and so because it'll give them additional throughput, this type of thing, and this is just really, really powerful, and you want to, at least coverage on that. Coverage is kind of the name of the game. You want to have as many different industries as you can, and industries specifically that have the highest overall density of construction usage or population usage in your economy. Tools probably being among the more important ones, but we're not going to talk too much about company selection type of strategy here. And the last one I think is kind of the must-have, and that's investment rights, and I think this is the absolute bananas one. I think investment rights is extremely strong until you get to the point where you've clearly turned a corner and you're just way stronger than the rest of the planet and this type of thing, and things don't really matter anymore. For most phases of the game where your power level is something that is even remotely questioned, I think that investment rights is probably just going to be insane. Now, we haven't really come up on top of a really powerful kind of endgame type of run, so maybe it falls off to some extent, but what investment rights does is it will allow you to establish regional company HQs in other people's countries, and I think going for this is one of the really, really powerful things you can do now. If we take a look at the assets of our company, we will see first what is owned by the company HQ in Sao Paulo, which is probably the company stuff you are used to. If we scroll way down, we will see our regional company HQs. These will have a regional HQ in other people's country, and this might seem like, hey, this is bad, we'd rather have the capitalists at home, we can tax the capitalists at home. There's a very, very important detail here. These guys, or the construction buildings that these guys buy/construct, are not purchased with your investment pool. They are purchased with the investment pool of the country they are in. So if we have this investment pool here in French West Indies, it's going to be France that is paying for these buildings that get built, not us. France's investment pool pays for this. China's investment pool paid for all of this, not ours. This is an enormous injection of free money. Now, if the regional HQs in Hunan are paying for this stuff, and then we never get a lick back and they're just buying more stuff, that doesn't matter. But if we take a look at the investment pool, and we take a look at what's going on in reinvestment, we will see that out of the money we're getting back, or reinvested, very nearly a third of it is from these regional company headquarters. This means we are super unlocked in terms of reinvestment. Reinvestment might generally be kind of hard to drain in some phases of the game, but a third of our reinvestment is from stuff that we've gotten for free from other people's countries by virtue of having investment rights and investment rights in their country, and also investment rights active on our companies. This is absolutely insane. It's super, super crazy, I think, and I think that this is like metagame warping. I do think that the treaties are metagame warping as well, but they're metagame warping more through different phases of the game, and I kind of think that this is probably always going to be particularly strong and going to be kind of the thing that shines about companies. Now, remember when we said don't give up investment rights? Yeah, if you give this up, other countries will do this to you, and your investment pool will go towards building buildings for them within your own nation. And so there's a lot to kind of unpack in regards to the companies, and a lot that I don't know. But as far as what we can tell from what we have seen, this is what we think. Investment rights is insane, and it makes it so that you want to get investment rights with every other single country. You can see how far we have gone to get investment rights. We have investment rights from every GP, with the exception of Russia, and we have been farming these so that we can tap their investment pool and get a bunch of free money so that we can pop off really hard and just build a bunch of construction and just go for it. So the fourth topic we have is metagames of the past, because I think there's two metagames of the past in particular that some of the play patterns remind me of. The first of, we have all these trade agreements with everyone. We have massaged in getting good relations with everyone really, really, really hard, and we've done this so that we can get trade agreements with everyone so that we could get all these regional HQs. This is reminiscent of the 1.7 bankroll meta, where everything was just about playing nice with all the GPs at all time, so you could get bankrolls from them because the bankrolls are so valuable. Well, this regional investment, or the regional company HQ is really, really valuable, so you see things like external trade as a principle is probably going to be good again. Not just because trade is actually valuable and trade capacity is actually a nice modifier, but for example, stuff like the influential trade center, giving you a little bit of influence is going to allow you to run more influence-based things. Now, in general, this gives you way less influence than it used to, so maybe external trade is not necessarily as useful overall, but the trading with people, this is going to allow you to get more of those trade agreements with people and leverage those trade agreements, which is primarily what we've done with a lot of these, in order to get investment rights. You can see that we have done this with Prussia in order to get the investment rights and also get a little bit of a money transfer, but that's not particularly important to us at this point of time. So I think that that old metagame or way of thinking is going to apply a whole lot more now. Now, there's another metagame before Mappy, before local prices, where a thing that was really particularly strong, and it involved, at the start of the game, you would put down 2 decrees. You would come in, and you would put down a resource decree in one location, and a manufacturing decree down in another, and what you would do with the resource and manufacturing decrees is you would push throughput as aggressively as possible. This was back in 1.4, and you would use trade, because trade was a lot better in 1.4, because MAPI is the thing that undid the trade. You would use trade to push your ability to, you would kind of import a lot of stuff, and then you would just export one specific thing you were pushing up, and generally it would be tools and iron. And what you would do is you would push economies of scale as hard as possible, because economies of scale gives you increasing marginal returns. When you build the first building, right, you get 101% of a building. When you build the 20th building, you actually get effectively 140% of a building, right? And so it makes your construction more effectively. The reason for this is when you build the first building, you get 101% of a building because you have 1% throughput. When you build the 120th building, you get 140% of a building because you have the 20% throughput on the building that you built, and all the buildings you brought from 19% throughput to 20% throughput have also gotten an additional throughput. Or sorry, 139% is what you get. And so what you would do is you would pick one industry, you build a whole bunch of it, and you would use trade to facilitate that. You would export the output good, and what you would do is you would import all the other goods that you needed in order to facilitate this, and you would push, where you had a manufacturing decree, you would push manufacturing, and where you had a resource decree, you would push the resources. Now, you can see here, we have over 100 throughput on the steel mills without even having economies of scale of 30. We will have 130 to 150% throughput, at some point later on. So if you can build a building that is going to have 100 throughput, that's going to make your construction twice as effective as it normally otherwise would be. So specializing and pushing stuff in the same way you did in 1.4 is going to be good. So what you could do is you can push throughput really hard and then build trade centers in a location. The trade centers will effectively undo the MAPI because when you import or export, it creates local buy and sell orders. So when we are exporting steel here, it is actually creating sell orders here. So if we take a look here, buy orders here. We take a look, we have the sell orders from all those steel mills, and then if we take a look, we have a lot of buy orders from this stuff, right? We also have buy orders from the trade centers. This is increasing the price of steel, making it more profitable in this area. Because trade is undoing the effects of MAPI, the metagame that was present before MAPI, that is before 1.5, is now kind of relevant as a way of thinking. Now, I think right now it kind of feels like you push trade centers, and maybe pushing throughput doesn't feel so good, but maybe that's just my sample size being relatively small, and I think it's perfectly reasonable that pushing iron to level 20 and tools to level 20 at the opener and trying to have a company that has iron, tools, or both is going to give you really explosive starts, especially when paired with 10,000 free income from GPs or something to this effect, or other ways you might peel free money off of GPs in order to facilitate this, and you just go absolutely ballistic. And so I think these are two metagames of the past that are particularly important for thinking through what is really effective play patterns now. That is the 1.7 metagame of being super diplomacy-oriented, where you would have good relations with everyone. You could see we have big agreements with everyone for these investment rights, nearly every GP, plus the Confederacy, this type of thing. And also just having this more of a sensitivity towards pushing throughput because of how the math works. It just becomes a lot more effective. And the reason you stopped doing it, you can now undo with trade centers. So a combination of trade centers and pushing throughput is probably going to be just generally strong. So let's talk about some more miscellaneous stuff. First thing, the canal companies, not only because companies now are just generally speaking going to be way easier to get prosperity on because they compare to their own industries. The Panama Canal Company gives you +1 max number of companies, so does the Suez Canal Company. So these are just strict upside. They give you 50,000 tax income, that's an insane amount, and 25% trade advantage. These are just absolutely insane, are probably worth going for extremely early, forcing really early, because they are just absolute freebies. Corn laws was also nerfed, so you can't really use it as easily, especially on more backward countries, because the guy it gives is now going to be a petite bourgeoisie guy, and so you're not going to be doing that as much. Your power block stuff, a lot of this has changed in terms of what's useful. First of all, there's a companies block that is going to give you +1 max company, This might be good. This is hard to evaluate how good this is. The fact that you can get these company HQs in other people's countries, and you can do it to hoover up their industries, but only if you have a company for that industry, maybe makes it so that an extra company is just absolutely bananas, and this is worth the slot. I don't really know. It also gives you an extra charter, extra throughput bonus, this type of stuff. Some stuff has been nerfed, some stuff has been buffed. Vassalization has been nerfed. It gives you less authority per subject, but at the same time, authority is better, so I don't actually think it's worse. Advanced research is considerably worse. It gives you a lot less max innovation investment than it used to previously. Transportation infrastructure, massive buff in plus 10 economies of scale building cap, and also port building throughput is going to be more valuable, I think, and so this is going to be strong. I don't think, it also gives an additional PM, but it gave that before. We also have a foreign investment. If your entire metagame strategy involves getting a whole bunch of things in other people's countries, because that gets you free money because you unlock their investment pool, then foreign investment might be good, but at the same time, I think you build so much in other people's countries that you just don't care, and you can incorporate people very, very easily. To that end of incorporating people, when we think more about kind of on a macro sense, which types of blocks are better. I think that Sovereign Empire was better before, and is probably still better because you could subjugate other people than kind of most of the other ones, and because vassalization is probably still pretty good. We do have internal trade, trade league is going to be better than it was because you can do external trade, and you can invite everyone in. This will allow you to pull migration, so definitely for a tall migration type of game, this is going to be a reasonable look. This has also gotten buffed, religious convocation, plus 5% birth rate, and so that's particularly strong. I think that its principal groups are pretty bad, but that is going to be a bit of a consideration in terms of if you want to try some different things. I think Sovereign Empire is better, but the margin by which, or best, but I think the margin by which it's best is now a lot smaller than it used to be previously because of some changes, mainly external trade and stuff like this getting better and stuff other like that. Corporate state, massive buff. It now gives you a free company. I haven't enacted it since the patch, but just seems strictly best. I mean, unambiguously. I don't know what else to say. Just incredibly strong. Laissez-faire does not give a free company. I think laissez-faire is probably best, but you can't do monopolies on laissez-faire. Prevents monopolies. And also, if you're getting a bunch of free investment pool from other countries, this makes capitalist investment pool, because it's their capitalists that are giving you that free money, I suppose, a little bit less valuable, and maybe there's an argument for interventionism. It's possible that it's better. I don't think it is, but it is certainly possible. Agrarianism is still going to suck because your ownership pops in your, and it's going to especially suck in your companies, are not aristocrats, and they're not, they're neither aristocrats, nor are they clergymen, nor are they farmers. They're capitalists, and so that's going to give you the best reinvestment. There is ownership type for cooperative ownership, and I do think you can maintain overseas ownership now. And so I haven't experimented with this, but cooperative ownership might be best as well. I'm not 100% sure. It's going to take some testing, but there have been changes made to it. I don't know which trade policy is best, and I don't know it by kind of a large margin. So let's talk about it. If you are running an export economy and you are only exporting, this is going to mercantilism is definitely going to be reasonable, especially if you actively don't want imports. This is going to make imports less profitable because, again, trade advantage gives you better margins. If you have better margin on something, right, your trade center is more likely to execute that trade. So this just categorically makes your trade centers less likely to execute imports and more likely to execute exports because they will get more money for them. You can also do tariffs and subventions. I think that mercantilism is probably not best, but it could be best. Protectionism is going to be kind of a more generic one. It's going to let you do tariffs on imports and exports, and it's going to give you no benefit or malice like mercantilism does. And then free trade is going to give you trade advantage categorically, but you lose access to tariffs. I think that free trade also bricks you from being able to do a whole bunch of these treaty stuff. That just gives you the good old freebies, where you can say, hey, I will give you no tariffs, because it locks it away. You can no longer do this if you are on free trade. So I think free trade is probably not best, and it's probably more between mercantilism and protectionism. which is kind of a little bit weird to say, but I think that this is probably the way that cookie crumbles. Also, just as a reminder, anything that gives you more authority is probably going to be good, because by virtue of the company charters eating authority and that being a sink for authority. Taxes got nerfed a little bit, but at the same time, government wages are going to be way less than they were before, because government buildings, rather than employing 5,000 pops each, now employ 1,000 pops each. You will be paying way less for government expenses. If you look at wages, they look relatively small compared to how much we're spending on construction goods in terms of what's going on, and economies will generally speaking be a lot more explosive than they were before. You can see relatively high GDPs from other people, although to be fair, we're building in their countries, and so this will also drive up a global GDP, even if they aren't owning the buildings. Population growth is also higher at lower SOLs, and will be lower at higher SOLs in terms of your overall trajectory, and so for a lot of runs, it will probably just overall, on a global basis, you will probably have more populations in your games, and so this is also a patch that has accelerated the economy quite a bit in a bunch of different ways, because the companies, which we haven't had a patch that has done that in some time, especially when you get to kickstart your economy with like 10k income, you yourself get to really get off the ground quite quickly. But there's a bunch of free types of value in companies being able to add an extra industry, cheaper government wages, all of this type of stuff. The cheaper government wages actually makes it also easier to push construction. Construction as a resource, incidentally, does feel a little bit crimped. At some phases of the game, it feels like we have unlimited investment pool and not enough control over construction. It is possible that laissez-faire is not strong and intervention is better until you have like 400 or 500 construction, just because of how much your own personal construction is gimped, and the fact that you actually need to get the buildings out of particular kinds, and so private construction allocation might just be a little bit painful. I think overall it's probably not in laissez-faire's best, but I'm just kind of spitballing the potentiality that you do want to stay on interventionism for a little bit longer, rather than going straight for laissez-faire. So I did want to add that I think that a lot of what we've said, your ability to specialize in various things, or your ability to really extract a lot of value by having investment rights in other people's countries, a lot of this applies when you are not 40% of the world's economy, or 50 or 60 or 70 or 80% of the world's economy, when you're under 10% of the world's economy. And if you get turbo big, I think specialization kind of ends, things shift back to being autarkic, but generally speaking, you are going to be much more specialized-oriented. Specialization's possible. Trade is really strong. You want to push the trade facilitates the specialization, and these types of things, and so you want to push the trade and the inputs for trade, so you want to push ports, these type of thing. Very quick note is there are a ton of buildings, or a ton of stuff like the London Docklands, which are going to give trade capacity and also market access price impact in various areas. These ports are all over the place. Some of them do look a little bit different, like the ones down here, which are also quite strong. But these are going to give you particular advantages in building in certain locations, also because their input is coastal input. Building on the coast is going to be slightly better for facilitating trade. I think that's a little bit to note. But other than that, I think that that's kind of our rough idea of what I think are kind of the most important points that we've been able to gather from this. Again, the idea here is to be timely rather than timeless. I'm probably missing a whole bunch of stuff, or misevaluating a whole bunch of things. I hope they've done okay, but the idea is we get something out in a kind of more immediate sort of sense. If you feel that anything's super good or super bad, or any of this, you can feel free to put it in the comments, this sort of thing. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe, do the YouTube algorithm thing. And other than that, have a good one.